Even though older camcorders can be pretty darn awesome and they're super fun to work with, saving the footage from them can be pretty darn frustrating. But fortunately, there are a few options out there. Unfortunately, the level of expense and complexity increases alongside quality. For example, a few months ago, I made one of my favorite videos that I've ever made. It was all about the Canon XL1, the story behind it, and the impact this camera made on me as a kid who was interested in learning about video production. But there were definitely some, you could call them pitchforks, in the comments of that video from people who were upset that I used the Elgato Video Capture to transfer the footage from the camera instead of doing it via Firewire, which would have given me the best quality possible. And the reason I didn't use Firewire in that video is because it's confusing. It's super confusing. Even though Firewire is digital, getting it to work with modern computers requires you to bridge multiple gaps between multiple generations of technology. So it's not as simple as just connecting one cable from your camera to your computer like it was back when Firewire was a common standard. So to make it work, what you essentially end up with is the Pimp My Ride version of workflows where it's like, yo dog, I heard you like adapters, so I put adapters on your adapters so you can adapt while you're adapting. So I'll show you how to do that, and I'll show you exactly what you need, but I'll also show you how to use the Elgato Video Capture, and then we can compare the footage from both just to see what the quality difference is. For Firewire, you need a Firewire cable. Fortunately, these are pretty inexpensive. Mine was $10. You need a Thunderbolt to Firewire adapter. This is about $90, and you also need a Thunderbolt 3 to 2 adapter, which is about $50. So that total is about $150. Now, I'm doing this on a Mac. I guess that's what I have. I don't know what the difference is with PC and if you're using an older computer or a newer computer. This is a 2021 MacBook Pro, but basically any Macs that are, USB-C specific, which has been about since 2016, this is kind of the workflow for those. Now, you might be able to find cheaper alternatives to some of these adapters, but I've had really inconsistent experiences and ended up needing to rebuy a couple of them. So I really do recommend sticking with the official Apple versions, even though they are a little more expensive. And the reason my price list isn't super accurate is because, which one is it? It is this one, the Firewire to Thunderbolt adapter. I bought this after I made my video a few months ago. And even though Apple has made this for many years, in the time since I bought it to now, which has only been a couple of months, they discontinued it. So you can't buy the Firewire to Thunderbolt adapter directly from Apple anymore, which is a bummer, but they are widely available on eBay. And obviously I can't link directly to an eBay listing, but I will put the exact model number of this in the description so you can copy and paste that to eBay, and then you can find these. There's a bunch of brand new ones that are about $90 on eBay, so that's kind of what you can expect to pay for this. Now, the next method is to use the Elgato Video Capture. The device itself has an MSRP of $90 and has a USB-A connector. But the good news is I've used this for like 5 or 6 years at this point. I've had no issues with it, and it's worked with every adapter or hub that I've connected it to, so it doesn't really seem super picky if you want to take this Type A connector and put it into a Type C adapter. Whether it's an official Apple one or a sort of cheaper third-party one, I've had no issues with this working with any of them, so it seems to be a pretty forgiving device when it comes to that. The Video Capture does need a Video Capture app in order to run, and that's a free download from Elgato's website. I haven't been able to get it to work with other apps, so it might be possible, but in general, if you're buying the Elgato Video Capture, plan on using it with the Elgato Video Capture app, which is both Mac and PC compatible. Now, along with the Video Capture itself, you do need the video cables to go from your camera to the device, and these can be a little different depending on each camera. So whatever the output of your camera is, what you want to end up with is something that has the yellow, red, and white RCA cables on one end, or an S-video cable, because S-video, the best video quality. Now, when it comes to importing your footage via Firewire, you have your Firewire cable here. This goes into the Firewire, don't drink every time I say Firewire, the Firewire to Thunderbolt 2 connector, but unless you're using an older Mac, you're not going to be able to connect this directly to your computer. So that's why you need the Thunderbolt 2 to USB Type-C connector here, and then this will work when you connect it to your computer. So this connects to the camera, this connects to the computer, And then you do need some sort of app to import the footage. There is no specific application like there is with the Elgato. So you Elgato kind of figure it out when you want to import the footage. With Final Cut Pro, the XL1 or whatever camera you connect will just show up as a source on the input screen, and you can select a few options and then import your footage from there. If you don't have Final Cut Pro, this also does work with iMovie and QuickTime. Those are kind of the free macOS options that I know it works with. And QuickTime is super simple. You just go to New Movie Recording, select your camera, press play on the camera, and then press record in QuickTime. Now, Final Cut Pro does have more import options, which is important to remember. And you can also control the camera's playback from your computer, which was a huge feature way back when Firewire was first introduced. It was like magic. Like you could push a button over here and the camera will do something crazy. Final Cut Pro also has the option to break up one long clip into individual clips. So pretty much every time you start a new recording on the tape of your camera, even though they're just back-to-back recordings, Final Cut will somehow magically turn those into separate clips, which can make your footage importing and organizing process a lot easier if you want it to. Now, from my experience experimenting with all these different processes, I have found that Final Cut Pro will give you more accurate raw footage, but that's sort of a double-edged sword. Overall, I got better results with QuickTime because Final Cut Pro, while it will give you exactly what the camera's importing, it will give you exactly what the camera's importing, which sometimes could have issues to it. So overall, I did get better results with QuickTime. It kind of seems like QuickTime applies some sort of processing or like a light filter of something, but this is, as you can see the theme with Firewire import, nothing is perfect. There is a yin to every yang. In QuickTime, even though the quality seems great and it takes care of a few issues, it's not the perfect method because QuickTime does not like blank space on a tape. If you have a tape and you have some footage here and then just blank space on the tape and more footage over here, when it hits this blank space, it's just gonna stop importing. It's gonna say error and it's gonna stop. It will save everything it recorded up to that point, but then you show up, 10 minutes later looking at your camera and you realize, oh, this has not been importing for a while. So when you're using QuickTime, it's a pretty good idea to keep a close eye on things, and you might need to re-import or restart your recording a couple of different times. But whether you're using Final Cut, QuickTime, iMovie, or something else, once you go through that process, then you will have the highest quality possible from your old camera on your modern computer. Now, the Elgato Video Capture is a much simpler process. Like I said, you can download the app free directly from Elgato's website. It's not like some shady, weird third party or anything. And then you're pretty much all set. So right now I have my XL1, I have the RCA cables going into the video capture and then into a USB-C adapter into my computer. And I am using S-Video because this has an S-Video output. So I'm not using the yellow video tab. I'm just using the red and white for audio. And this is gonna give me the best analog video quality that I can get from this camcorder. This is also the best way to import footage from totally non-digital, totally analog camcorders like this old Sony Handycam here, an old VCR, or something super nifty like this 8mm, was it a video Walkman? I wanna make a whole separate video about this. But if you have a totally analog device, then the Elgato Video Capture is the way to go. What I really like about the Elgato Video Capture application is that it walks you through the entire process before you start recording and importing to make sure that your video and audio signals are good. It also lets you select if you're using S-Video or RCA, and it also lets you choose 4:3 or 16:9. So you have some versatility in there, but there's no other specific settings or anything to dial into. And then after that, you basically just hit a big red record button and press play on your camera or your VCR or whatever. You can set the app to stop recording after a certain amount of time, or you can just let it run indefinitely. So now that I've imported the same XL1 footage twice, once via Firewire and once with the Elgato Video Capture, let's take a look at the differences in quality to see what you get with all of that extra effort and a little bit of extra cost when you're using Firewire. Side by side, I think it's pretty easy to see that Firewire is definitely clearer, and 100% this is the way to go if you want the absolute best results and best quality that your camera is capable of giving. There's also, and this is interesting, I noticed a lot less motion blur and smearing in the Firewire footage. You can kind of notice that in this freeze frame here, where the Firewire freeze frame is clear and still, and the Elgato Video Capture, the analog capture, kind of has a little bit of blur and smear to it. So overall, as you just look at footage imported with the different methods, I think it's pretty clear that objectively the Firewire footage does look better. But does it look that much better, and is it worth it? Honestly, I don't know. I think that's up to you to decide. If you don't mind this workflow and you don't mind the adapter centipede that you will have to create, then there's really no reason, I guess, not to get the best quality possible. But despite what the comments in my original XL1 video led me to believe, I actually didn't find the difference to be that massive. Nothing is going to make someone mistake a 20-plus-year-old camcorder like this, standard definition, 480 lines of resolution, for like a modern 4K or 8K camera, which is kind of what people were making it sound like in the comments of that video. I had people swearing up and down that the quality was like pretty much indistinguishable and super close to modern cameras, but we're gonna take a bit of a turn here. I think there's another point to consider. You remember GoldenEye on Nintendo 64 or any of those video games from that era? When I started playing them, I genuinely thought that they looked photorealistic. But replaying those games recently, it's just like Polygon City. But way back in 1997, when like GoldenEye was released, I think my brain was making up the difference visually and filling in a lot of those gaps to make the game look and feel so much more realistic and so much higher quality than it actually was. And those were the highest quality graphics I'd ever seen in my life at that point, so there was not much else to compare them to beyond that. In fact, actually, this is just sort of another interesting aside to this aside, but I found a research thesis from 2020, so relatively recent, that explores perceived reality in video games. I'll put a link to it in the description because it is really super fascinating and helps to explain how all these different elements combine into how we perceive the quality or realism of something that's digital and visual. The reason I bring that up is because I think something very similar can happen with cameras. If you use something like the XL1 back when it first came out, it was delivering the best quality you'd ever seen at the time, but you haven't used it in 20 plus years, you might remember the footage being almost as good as modern cameras or absolutely exceptional, but I kind of think maybe your brain, your imagination, maybe some nostalgia glasses, were kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And if you go back and look at that footage from an objective perspective without that nostalgia factor or bias, it might look a little bit different. So all that to say, getting back on track here, Firewire is great, and the quality is as good as you can get, but it's also kind of a pain to use with modern computers, and something simple like the Elgato Video Capture will get you 90% of the way there with a lot less frustration. Thank you to everyone who helps support my channel through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships. I wouldn't be able to get all these old camcorders and crazy adapters without you. And if you haven't seen my XL1 video, which is one of my favorite videos that I've ever made, it would really mean a lot to me if you check that out right here.